Check 1 2 1 2 3 4. ALMExpo streaming live from the Better Software Conference. This is the ALMExpo streaming live from the Better Software Conference in Orlando. I'm Bob Aiello, and with me today is Jeff Norris from NASA. And perhaps you could start, Jeff, by telling us a little bit about what you do at NASA and what your position is.
That'd be my pleasure. So I lead the organization at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory that's responsible for mission planning and execution. So the people, the tools, and the processes that we use to command many of our spacecraft.
All right. So one of the things that you talked about in today's presentation is the impact that Alexander Graham Bell had on agile development from your perspective. I'm wondering if you could give us a quick recap, because that was really enjoyable.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess what I would say is that I believe the example of Alexander Graham Bell's life and the decisions that he made and the way that he pursued his greatest invention, I believe embody one of the core pillars of agile thinking. So it may not show up in an agile textbook, but he embodied a sense of vision, of understanding the impact that something that did not exist could have on the world, and then bringing that into reality. But I also talked about different kinds of vision that surrounded Alexander Graham Bell, about the vision that was that his wife showed, Mabel Bell, who was really the reason that the telephone came out onto the world stage that it ultimately occupied, and also some stunning lack of vision in some of the competitors of the Bell telephone company. So yeah, that part of the talk was all about vision, and I find Alexander Graham Bell a fascinating and inspiring figure.
Now, being at NASA, you're certainly in a center where having vision and imagination and thinking about what can be is just implicit in the culture there. Can you give us a couple of examples of where that may be a challenge sometimes, and how do you bring about communicating that vision to others?
Sure. So it's true. NASA is challenged, I think, frequently to go and do something that hasn't been done before, and do it for the first time. And that's actually where the men and women who work for NASA, I believe, that's what we're there for. We want to do those things which are almost so ludicrously impractical that no company on Earth would dare attempt it, and do it enough times that then those companies are excited to go and try it for themselves. However, amidst all of that desire to go and do something challenging and it's never been done before, we also have to succeed and to properly understand the risks that we're taking when we set out on one of these grand challenges. And so actually the second part of the talk that I gave this morning was about risk, and about understanding risk and managing it, taking risks that may ultimately result in a much higher chance of success, though at first they might have seemed very dangerous.
Now, that's certainly, that whole topic of risk and NASA caught my attention. I think it caught everybody's attention. How do you think you can justify, in an environment like NASA where you're putting a space shuttle, people's lives at stake, how do you justify the inherent risks of software development? And then on top of that, to go out on a limb and promote using agile practices. What was that like for you?
Well, it's challenging. So first, I should say that I work primarily in robotic space exploration, and although I do think that agile practices would be beneficial in the human spaceflight world of NASA, it's not an area that I've personally applied it yet. In the robotic space exploration field, where still mission critical is a term that we take very seriously, I've found that the use of agile methods has increased our chances of success and reduced many of the risks that have plagued other projects. The biggest risk I feel that it helps us retire is the risk of not building the right thing. So, I mean, we all understand the risks of building something that has a bug in it, or building something that malfunctions at a critical juncture, and those, we need other techniques, I believe, to address those, and we have testing methodologies and things like that to address those challenges. But the risk of building the wrong thing is something that any amount of testing won't rescue you from. And I believe that agile methods allow us to stay on target with what needs to be built, which is quite often not what we thought we needed to build when we started. And so, when people ask me, how can you use agile in a mission critical environment? For me, it is the safest way to make sure that my teams build the thing that is needed, not the thing that we thought we needed when we started the project.
Now, what kind of challenges did you run into? I can't imagine that everybody was on board with this from the beginning, and I think it would be helpful for a lot of the folks out there that are trying to promote agile methods to hear some of the sorts of things that you ran into and how you dealt with them in promoting agile methods.
It's a challenge, and will continue to be. So, sure, like any large organization, all of NASA has not embraced this way of working yet. And to be clear, I believe that a lot of that resistance comes from a good place, meaning that people are very motivated to do the best things possible, to reduce risk wherever possible. And, so I really can't criticize them for seeking to do that by being careful about changing the way that we work. Because let's face it, there's plenty of ways that we could change the way that we work that would be very bad for the way that we do business. And there's even models of software development that I think wouldn't work for NASA. Speaking to Agile particularly, though, I feel that what we've been able to do is to try to show the stakeholders, the people who are very worried about risk, the project managers, the mission managers, to show them that Agile methods increase the critical quantity of their insight and control of the project. A lot of times I think people look at Agile and they feel that this is a way that will cause them to lose control of the project, meaning that suddenly the team is off and we have scope creep happening or things like that. It comes from a misconception of the way that these methods work. We try to show those people how they're going to gain the ability to constantly steer and correct the direction of the team to stay on target with what their evolving vision is. And so that's one of the big ways we've helped people to grow more comfortable, is to show them the increase in control.
So 2011 certainly had a lot of challenges, and 2012 is coming up. What would you say would be the predictions that you see on the horizon? What's up next, and how do you think you're going to deal with that in your position?
So first, actually, 2011 has been a really exciting year for robotic space exploration. So we've launched 3 spacecraft, 3 Jet Propulsion Laboratory spacecraft already. The Aquarius, which is an Earth orbiter, the Grail mission to the moon, twin spacecraft studying the interior of the moon, the Juno spacecraft on its way to Jupiter, all amazing missions. And we're about to launch this month the Mars Science Laboratory rover, the Curiosity rover, which is an amazing vehicle. It is bigger and more powerful and more capable than anything we've ever launched to the surface of Mars before. It will land there next August. So next year is going to be a really exciting time if you're a Mars person, and I get really excited about Mars. I've worked on the rover missions. So next August is going to be called a Super Bowl moment for us. I mean, it's just an amazing time. We want to score that touchdown. It is a challenging endeavor. It is a frightening, scary moment that we're looking up towards. But 2012, I think, is going to be a really exciting time for robotic space exploration in the agency.
All right, last question I got for you, and before we get to it, I just want to make sure everybody stays tuned for the great presentations we have coming up. Also, we've got an Amazon giveaway for $50 if you're in the chat room. Make sure that you are participating in that so that we can include you in that exciting time. But the last question that I really want to ask you, Jeff, is you mentioned risk a lot in your talk. Is risk bad? And how do you deal with the inherent risks? You certainly had some serious risks you had to think about.
Well, yeah, I guess I would say fundamentally risk is bad, meaning that if we could do what we want to do without any risk, well, that would be better. It would be great to succeed and do great things without risk. But risk is inevitable. It's something that permeates change, and change is where progress happens. It's the famous person who said that all progress is made by unreasonable people. It's made by people who are willing to stomach that risk. So it's not a good thing. It's something that has to be understood and tracked and managed, just like you would track other currencies on a project. So your schedule, your funding, your people, your physical space, all of these things are things you get to spend. So is risk. So it's a currency. You can't spend. You don't want to spend it all in one place. You don't want to, overspend your risk budget, but it nonetheless is something that you have to embrace and control the way that you would other currencies.
All right, very good. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Great
Bob.
presentation today. I know you also did a live demo that was very risky and very well received.
It was fun, too. I appreciate it.
Up next, we've got Edward Kitt, who's going to be joining us. And I want to remind everybody that our Twitter hashtag is ALMExpo11. That's ALMExpo11. Please do be tweeting out there. And Jeff, we're looking forward to having you back again. And maybe we can have Ed come up and join us next for the next conversation.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, just come a little closer. Hi, Ed.
Hi, how are you doing?
Welcome. Glad to have you here today. And perhaps you could start by telling us what your title is and who you work for.
I'm CEO of Software Development Technologies, a company I founded in 1992.
All right. And what kind of business are you involved with? What does your company do?
We're really a professional software test services business. We focus on two areas primarily. We do a lot of we call high-end test transformation work. We go into a company to set up centers of excellence for testing, basically get processes, people, technology, metrics, everything aligned throughout the enterprise. So we do the test transformation work. The other thing that we do a lot of is test services for people, where we'll go in and take over a project, or in several cases or many cases, we'll just do the testing for a company. So people expect us to come in and handle their testing for them.
So that's a great setup for this question. What are some of the recent trends that you find are in professional services, and how do you go about addressing those sort of trends?
Right, thank you. I think for us, we maybe see things a little bit differently than a lot of folks. We're often asked to come in and put together teams very quickly, often scale those teams very quickly, and usually they're a combination of people that work for us or don't yet work for us, or 1099 consultants. So we have the processes already, we have the training which we can put in place, but where I've really seen a lot of the new innovation, if you will, is in the mentoring process. And we really feel that if you don't have a very well-organized, well-defined, well-tooled approach to mentoring, you're not going to win with the adoption in the long run. So I think with when we go in to do transformations, we're trying to help people to really transform the way they do testing throughout the organization, and to really make that work. We found one of the keys that hasn't been focused on in the past has been the whole mentoring side of it. So that's an area we focused very heavily on.
Now, you got to hear Jeff talking about managing risk at NASA, and that certainly was a thrill, I think, for all of us. Can you talk a little bit about some of the risks that you run into in your area of work, and how you go about addressing those risks?
Well, we can run into just about anything. You know, unlike Jeff, who works for NASA, I've been to JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, done consulting there, and that's, you know, one kind of environment. With my company, we work for a large variety of companies. So it may be a government company that's involved with risks that have to do with the government in some sort. Another area, it might be a company, you know, like Sandia or JPL and other companies. And most frequent for us is large commercial enterprises. Our customers have included people like PepsiCo and FedEx, and, you know, we're working right now a lot in the casino industry, MGM. So the risks in an MGM are a little different, but when you really look at them and step back, as Jeff talked about in his talk this morning, you often find that just about everybody who's here today has mission critical at one level or another. If the software stops working, if their company fails, if you can't bring a casino live, pretty serious for at least the company and the individuals that work for that company.
I know that I find when organizations bring me in as a CM expert, they usually have serious problems with their configuration management best practices, and that's, you know, led me to write books on the subject and really be involved with achieving wins over those kind of problems. But I also find there's often a lot of resistance to change. Do you find that there's resistance in the sorts of testing challenges that you run into?
Always.
How do you diagnose those problems, and how do you go about addressing them?
Well, I think you start at the top. When we're asked especially to do test transformations, we're asked to make sweeping changes. We're often asked to figure out what it is that needs to be changed. They just know that there's a failure. It could be in release management, configuration management. Usually there are problems there, as well as in testing, software inspections. All those areas can have problems. But we find that if we don't begin by, I'll meet with one of the executives in the company. Typically the CIO is the lowest level I'll meet with, often the CEO. If those folks are not completely on board, I'll talk to them. I'll say, this is the kind of program we've run. It's not enough that I've done 15 of these test transformations in $30 billion companies unless you know where I'm going and what I'm going to do, and unless you're completely supportive of it. So it begins, and they don't always sign up for it, and then I don't take the engagement. So I will not go in if I don't get the senior management to say, I get what you're doing. So I think it begins with that, and then you have to prompt them throughout an engagement to say, now's the time when you need to say this to the organization. So they need to know you're going to feed them with things to say, and you're going to help them through the process. And when they're a good part of the team, they will pave the way, they'll get people's attention for you, and that really sets the stage for you to have a real opportunity to succeed.
Now, Ed, you've talked about getting buy-in from the top down, which obviously is essential. But what about from the bottom up?
Well, also essential. I find if you line up the top down and they get you in front of the folks, so I'll usually ask them to call a meeting, a pre-meeting, get everybody in the room, and give me a chance to talk to those folks. And normally, again, as Jeff talked about, it begins with a vision. So normally those folks want to know, what is the vision that where are you taking us? How are things going to be different in the future? So I think you have to be able to tell them, look, this is where we've done this before that's like your organization. Typically, they want to know, if you're in one casino, they want to hear about another casino that you did. Now, the reality may not be that important that you did 5 casinos, but you have to be able to talk to them about that, right? So I think you have to come, at the level where they're coming from. You have to meet them where they are. You have to give them a clear vision. You have to tell them what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And with the senior leadership there, those folks are typically not the problem. They want to see things get better. The folks are typically feeling a lot of pain. You can talk to those pain points and help them understand the difference in the pain they're feeling now and where it's going to be better for them in the future. Once you express that to them pretty clearly, they get on board.
Now, we've got your keynote coming up at 12:45, which we're certainly all looking forward to. And I also want to make sure everybody knows that we've got CollabNet coming up next with 5 things your development teams should be doing now. And those are all going to be great presentations. But I want you to kind of sum things up by giving us an idea. What do you think is on the horizon? What's coming up? Cloud has been very hot. Rapid application development is very hot. What do you think some of the real things that are going to be, we're going to have to face in 2012? What's up next?
Well, you mentioned some things. We went from client server, and SOA was really big for a while, and now the cloud is taking over. Cloud is for real. I think everything that we see, I think the fact that we're doing this right now, we're in the cloud, other folks are in the cloud, we're all living in the cloud. When I give the keynote, same thing will happen. I do run a lot of parts of my business now already in the cloud, so I think probably the cloud and virtualization, I don't see them as exactly the same things, but I think the virtualization aspect of things has moved technology along where that's going to be a big item. Frankly, it's another evolution of technology. Cloud kinds of things have been around for a long time. SOA in one form or another has been around for 30 years. So in a way, I see it as a new hot thing that everybody wants to talk about it. In another way, I see that not much has really changed. We still have to deal with the basics of how we do business and how we communicate with individuals. But certainly virtualization, cloud computing, those are here to stay.
They are here to stay, and you've got your finger in the pulse of one of the real pain points. The distinction between virtualization and cloud computing, it's a subtle distinction, and many people get it a little bit confused. Do you have any thoughts about that? How do you kind of keep that straight in your engagements?
Well, for us, and I'm probably not the world's foremost expert on virtualization, but from my perspective, if you look at companies like VMware, where they began to virtualize systems and began to really help people with reducing the hardware needs. In the old days, you had to have lots and lots of equipment, just banks and banks and banks of devices. When you can use virtualization to dramatically reduce that, you've taken a step in the world of cloud. But cloud is virtually anything that can be hosted, up in the sky there, and you can reach up to and you can touch and you can get your hands on. And you can use it. So when I take photos of my wonderful family, I post them on, I use SmugMug. A lot of company people haven't heard of that, but it's a great place to just put things very easily. Virtually anybody on the planet can see them. That's using the cloud. So I think just using the ability to put things up there and have other folks get to them, as opposed to really virtualizing a desktop or virtualizing your actual storage need. And certainly there's a lot of lines that get blurred between both of those items.
So we've been talking with Ed Kidd, as the CEO of Software Development Technologies. Ed, your presentation's up at 12:45, and we've also got Collabnet coming up with 5 things your development teams should be doing now. Folks, make sure that you're using your Twitter, and the hashtag, once again, is ALMExpo11. That's ALMExpo11. We've got a $50 gift card, $50 gift card from Amazon waiting to come to you if you'll be chatting in the chat areas. And we are, of course, the ALMExpo, coming to you live from the Better Software Conference in Orlando. And for ALMExpo, I'm Bob Aiello.